I guess this is the good part about Zoom is we get to see each other. We never get to see each other otherwise.
Yeah.
Pak Sumandhi and I are going to be talking about our experience learning Wayang and teaching Wayang. And I wanted to start out by talking about my first time I ever saw a Wayang, which was in 1970. I had gone to Bali. I ended up in the village of Pangosekan, having started out on the beach in Kuta Beach. At that time, there was one losman and one typewriter, which I thought was very exciting in the losman. And I met a guy selling paintings on the beach. And I said, I didn't come to Bali to be on the beach. I want to live in a village. And he said, okay, I'll take you to my village. And he took me to Pangosekan, where there was a room full of painters painting all these amazing monsters and heroes. And I had no idea what they were painting. I didn't speak a word of Indonesian or Balinese. Most of them really didn't speak Indonesian either. So I listened to the energy flowing around the room as these painters were painting, and at night they'd be playing gamelan. And sometimes everybody would get all excited and jump up. And so I jumped up with them, and we started walking through the rice field. And at that time, there were lots of fireflies, and they all carried flashlights with them, and they were blinking their flashlights, kind of imitating the fireflies, I thought. And we walked over to Pliatan through the rice field. There was no road at that time. And I saw a Wayang. And there was a flame. There was a man sitting behind the flame manipulating puppets. And he had a sound in his voice that sounded to me like wind in the trees. And he was playing all the parts. And I was totally fascinated. And then a couple of years later, I had the opportunity in San Francisco to study Javanese Wayang with Paco Mortopo, who told the entire Mahabharata from beginning to end during the course of that summer. And the next summer, I met Pak Sumandhi. And it was the same school, but this time it had moved to Seattle. And I realized that I really appreciated something about Balinese Wayang that Javanese Wayang didn't have. In the first place, it's much more portable, 4 instruments instead of 30. And in the second place, there's a system of translation where the main characters speak the ancient language, and everything, and the clowns, the foundation characters, speak the language of the audience. So I thought that I could use that as a way of communicating, and I was very attracted to it. And luckily, Pak Sumandhi was teaching that year.
And then in 73, you joined the class where Bob Brown, as a president of the what you call Center for World Music at that time. So at that time, you and a couple of friends, American, around 7 of them, joined my class. I was teaching wayang kulit, gamelan gender wayang, and keca at that time. So I give you, studying wayang kulit at that time started. So at that time, my problem was also, you know, because of my English. I don't speak English at that time, you know, very poor one. And then you helping me, and also some other who's that, and John Beden at that time. Oh no, Michael Wishy. Yeah, Michael Wishy helping those speak English. My class would, and I learned a little bit every they about the English one, and also we communicate with Larry and other friend who understand about bahasa Indonesia at that time. So I was happy because you helping me as teaching. And when I start, because still also at beginning I get confused how to start to teach the foreign people in doing wayang kulit. And then it turned out I just try to do the same thing like how the people studying wayang in Bali. So beginning, you know, the people who studying wayang in Bali has to teach how to move the puppet. Some puppet, you know, has to look like dancing and also walking, fighting, and so forth.
That before anybody learns to be a Dalang, they're already musicians and they're already dancers, usually.
Most of the people who studying wayang in Bali is like, you know, they come and stay at uh, the teacher's house and listening, waiting, you know, try to help the Dalang, what they're doing during every day. And then, of course, some of them, they you know, by the teacher order or ask, should be studying a little bit the music, a little bit the dancing, because very important one to be the Dalang. If you are you know, helping by dancing or play music, will be better what they call to be a puppeteer. Like also the most important is singing. The singing part is very important. The song come from the manuscript, the bahasa Kawi, and our language we use not Balinese language during the performance, so we have to use the Ulu Jawanese language, what we call bahasa Kawi. So we have or teach the people, the student learning bahasa Kawi on manuscript. So they singing by the word or Ulu Jawanese language. Some of at that time when I was teaching, you know, I cannot give too many words or sentences because very difficult a little bit to remember the Kawi language. So I give just simple Kawi language and then translate into local language, especially at that time. I just let you, Pak Larry, translate into English improvisation, so freely, so very easy because I don't have to teach you, don't speak English. So how, you know, make nice communication or teaching, but turn out we try, you know, you helping me in bahasa, you know, Indonesia and a little bit in English. That was very, very good, you know, and I was happy. And of course, the beginning, what I want, we give you practice beginning is the movement of wayang, especially in Bali. Always appear the puppet, what we call wayang kayonan, look like this, and so this puppet very easy to move. Just shake the puppet and turn, because it has only one stick. So turn the puppet, turn and spin right and left on the screen. So this is the easiest, movement of wayang. But
Actually, it's really hard. Because there's a certain way you do that is really interesting, and then it begins down low, and then it starts to rise, and those things have a meaning.
Yes, because this is the tree of life. The tree always, appear always from low, starting low, and then after that move, forward and up and higher, and that's some we call dancing kayonan. Like dancing or moving on the screen. Yeah. So that means the tree just starting from low and then turn out up and then higher. That's the kayonan dancing. I don't make a special what we call fixed dancing of the wayang, just free, because only just shake the hand, the puppet, and that's just the only movement of kayonan. And secondly, I give the movement of what we call the main character, what we call Arjuna. Look like this, and this puppet has three sticks, one stick of the body and two sticks of his hand. So we move the puppet hand by controlling the stick of the hand, and make this what we call the nice shadow of the wayangs on screen. We control by the stick of Arjuna, and at that time we make like the movement of wayang, kind of dancing. So like his hand up and like this, yeah, and then how to stick the puppet. We have the banana log to stick the puppet, and then make tight, and then we make the puppet moving like this. So kind of the movement of wayang look like a dancing movement. So make the hand of wayang is like go to the hand and make the band like this. So that basic what called movement of wayang. And then of course, because we have to do wayang not just by movement, of course we give the basic song. So song of the wayang, the entrance of the puppet has to sing by the Dalang. The beginning one we call melody alas harum.
And before we start that, Before we start that, I just want to say there's a symbolism about the banana log is the earth, the screen is the sky, the flame is the sun, and the Dalang in this case is kind of like God because he's animating all the puppets.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So according to our people also in Bali, we believe that like the puppet are the creature, the people. Yeah. So my what we call the movement of the Wayang, we try to also imitating the movement of the dancing. Yeah, some. Yeah. And after the the movement of Arjuna, the refined character, and then we have to do the uh, the singing, for instance, like this. The singing the song is in Slendro skill. Our skill in Bali is Pelog and Slendro. So our Wayang song is in Slendro. For instance, like this. Rahino dadas kematian umuni meredang. So make the the movement of Arjuna with combined by the song like this. Rahino dadas kematian umuni meredang. So that is a combined between the song and the movement. And other thing, we have to combine by what we call chapalo and I don't know, gavel, I don't know, like hammer. Hammer we use on the leg, yeah, and hit the box. The box. The hammer chapalo hit the box to make the sound effect of the movement of wayang. So that's a combination between the song, the movement, and the chapalo. And then we have to accompany by the music. At that time, I also, give Valeri and the other friend studying Gender Wayang, the music for the center play, and so the combine between movement Wayang, the song, the chapalo, and also music of Wayang. So that is, the order, how the people usually study Wayang in Bali. The what they call the other puppet, we have another harder move is this one.
So just before we jump into that, I want to mention that the story that Pak Sumandhi picked for the performance was Arjuna Tapa, which is where Arjuna fights against Niwata Kawacha. So it's a refined male character against a demon, and it's very clear to everybody which is which. Some of the other stories, when it's human against human, cousins against cousins, it's a little bit less clear. And these characters that he's bringing out now, there are two that accompany the protagonists and two that accompany the antagonists. Now the protagonists always enter from the Dalang's right hand, and the antagonists always enter from the left hand. And the protagonists are, the servants are Tualan and Merda. They're a father and son. And the other side is Dalam and Sangat, who are two brothers. And that's sort of with the dynamic between those two, you actually tell the whole story to the audience. And performing, sometimes one character or another takes over and you don't know which one is going to be more important. Sometimes it's Tualan, sometimes it's Merda.
So this one, Tualan, always whenever he, appear on the screen, has to, give a song, a special song for the Tualan. And at the time, I remember a little bit hard by our friend, the student, to sing Balinese, what do you call, Balinese sound.
Lots of sound.
Everybody can do it. So our wayang always, whenever they appear, and then has to sing the song just a little bit or long singing. It depends on how they need in the story.
So there's a question, hold on a sec. There's a question from Kobina about how we learn Kawi. And basically, Pak Sumandhi introduced the Kawi in simple sentences in the context of the story and the songs as well. And I really relied on using a tape recorder, both in Seattle and later on with Pak Sumandhi's father. The tape recorder enabled me to try to catch the feeling and the sound of the language, because it really is a feeling that you have to get. And I don't know if anybody had a chance to see Shadow Master, but there's a scene in there where we go to the Panchuran. There's spouts coming out from the hill, and that is a place where all the Dalangs from Tunjuk always went to practice. So I would go out there to practice too, feeling like I was probably alone in the rice field. And then 10 years later, people said, we really miss you being out there because we love to hear you practicing. And for me, actually singing is something I've always been terrified of. So I spent a lot of time trying to catch the sound of the singing there. And the language as well.
But yeah, that turned out you can do, to do the song of Balinese or Wayang at that time. It's very, very great, My father, when he was, teaching you at the beginning, Pak Leri susah menyanyi Wayang. But finally, sekarang sudah bisa melakukan alas sarung dan wayang fight lainnya. Itu my father was happy with you because you always follow my father whenever he perform, and learning by watching. So almost I think every night my father performance, you join him and listening his performance to see his movement of wayang. So I was at that time very happy because that is the way of our people in Bali studying, always must follow and listen the teacher. You cannot because at that time not a lot of people studying at school. So our people.
That's true. It was at that time. I think that people were either part of the family or related to the family. And when I made Shadow Master, it's really my story of learning to be a Dalang, but also at the same time, there was another boy there who was also studying. So I focused on him for the movie. But the idea of getting in trucks and going around Bali every night to some other place, I got to know Bali by night very well. I never had an idea of what it was like in the daytime other than in the village compound. And after 6 months, he said, it's time for you to perform in the temple. There was a temple next door to the house. And he said, this is not to perform for an audience. It's really to kind of ask permission of the gods to continue and to show them where you've gotten to. And he didn't come to the performance. And I said, how come you didn't come to the performance? He said, well, I could hear you. I was sitting next door. But you know, if your best friend falls down, you want to pick him up. And I knew I couldn't have done that. So I stayed a little bit away.
So, you know, whenever I teach Wayang, always I choose the story Arjuna Tapo. The reason why, because the character is puppet very clear. The people side on right side, the refined one, and the demon character of left side is, you know, different, very what to call the demon like Raksasa has different body and fat body, and also has boil, you know, bowling eyes, and has fang. So, and his voice very different too. The difference between Pipit, you know, Arjuna, where is Arjuna? So this, yeah, this is the demon called Niwata Kawacha, has to give a voice loud and strong, for instance, like this. Sija! Ayo kita Melayu saking kini. Udah momo si muka kita lah mami kena sira si Arjuna. Makanya. So that is has to make a loud.
I feel like I'm back in class with you in 1973.
Yeah, so and then the refined one should be high voice of the Dalang, the puppeteer. The highest, my highest voice is this one. Udah cara ketualian kita. Ayo mangdok kita lah nutpuri lampaku markanang Indra Kilagiri. Makano. Sang suruh merekayannya. Aring samaro mahyuna. So that is what we call simple movement of the wayang. Especially we make dancing, I mean, kind of movement wayang and movement similar to the movement of the human being is like this. For instance, like the dalam, the puppet dalam move like this. Biar itu Sangan yang asrama. Sedawa ngiwadian lawan Sumandhi. Yuri so, okay, now this is the movement of dancing, the dancer.
Yuk, yuk.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy. Titan sangat dengan asrama. Sedang non yang lawan Sumandhi. Marah.
So good.
Ya no lawan Jawa mati. Soang sudah merikayanya. So that is, between movement of puppet and movement of the shadow, like that.
Referring back again to Shadow Master, there's a scene where Pak Rajeg is walking down the street with his apprentice. Pak Rajeg is barefoot, the apprentice has tennis shoes on. And he's telling him that it's really important, that when we die, we don't take anything with us, except for what we manage to teach other people through the years, little by little. And since Pak Rajeg has died, the whole family has really strongly begun to teach the younger generations in a way that I think is really wonderful and really powerful. So that's all I want to say about that. And it's so good to see those kids.
Oh yeah, I'm very happy. As you know, Pak Larry, beginning from my grandfather, and second generation is my father, and the third generation is me, Sumandhi, and number 4 is Nyoman atau Negara to be the puppeteer, and now Wawan number 4 and number 5 is the youngest is Dekdum. So I'm happy if every family interested in playing gamelan and also one dancing and studying wayang. So especially
when I found out that Koman was interested in wayang, I made a copy of all the tapes that I had made of his grandfather and sent them to him so that he could hear the sound. And then he memorized the tapes.
Yeah.
And everybody was saying, Koman, you have to do your own story. Don't do his story.
Yeah, I remember that when you make, Komang, what year was that you're starting to participate in Shadow Master playing wayang, just a short movement of wayang Komang Garo at that time. But now he's already, old. Now I'm happy with grandson to continue, and so that means they will keep our heritage, our puppet. We have a few boxes of wayang. So my grandson, doing wayang now. I'm happy to see them. Yeah. So that is the movement of the Wayang combined, you know, by the dancing. So the
You know, one other thing I just have to say is that going off with the Wayang group to all these different ceremonies is where I learned how to eat quickly. Because everybody else would have 2 plates and I'd be still eating 1 plate. And then I pretty soon figured out that I had to eat as fast as the rest of the crew was in order to have enough to eat.
yeah. So
it was the
no,
greatest experience I could ever imagine, to be able to be part of this you know, 4 Dalangs, 2 assistants, 4 Gender players and 2 assistants, all really wonderful people. I learned so much from that. It was such a great experience.
Yeah.
And you know, wait, and then, so, okay, we finished in Seattle. And I said, Pak Sumandhi, I really want to study this more. And he said, well, you know, I'm studying in the US, so why don't you go to my house and stay in my room and study with my father?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
that's what happened.
And it happened that's really good. So what do you call? So you make my father can, you know, improve his bahasa Indonesia. At that time when you came to Bali, you know, my father didn't speak bahasa, and then you know, you came to Bali and you try bahasa Indonesia, and Pak Rajeg also practice, you know, his bahasa, you know, that was to improve his what you call his bahasa Indonesia with you, yeah. So,
you know, I would ask him a question, and my Indonesian was really not very good, and so he would answer the question, and as long as he was talking, I would listen, and as long as I would listen, he was talking,
yeah.
and he would be talking for a really long time. And then several years later, he told me, you know, I really never understood your questions. So I thought I would just talk, and maybe you would find something in my answer that would answer your question.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
you know, there's something came through there. I don't know what it was. It wasn't really all understanding the words of it. It was understanding the feeling behind it more than anything, I think.
So now I just remember when we worked with Pak Larry teaching in France, Charleville, Messier. So at that time, my first experience with you, you know, how the foreigner teach foreigner also at that time, people from all over the world, you know, a couple, you know, people studying Wayang with us in France. So I was
I know,
surprised.
I really didn't. It didn't seem like they were really ready for us in France. They weren't ready for Asian theater yet, or something like that. And a lot of the people had trouble sitting on the ground. In fact, a man from Boston threw his back out and had to go to the hospital just because he couldn't sit down. And this was a group of people from all over Europe, so that everything we did, we had to translate or have somebody else translate into 2 or 3 other languages. It was very interesting.
Yeah. So I'm happy with them because everybody, of course, speak their own languages for the clown, for the dalam sangut. That is, well, to me, I don't understand the language from Czechia, from Dutch, Holland, and from France. So, but sound very interesting to listen. They know how to translate our Kawi language into their own bahasa. So very interesting also for me, you know, have experience with you at that time.
You know, the
Studying.
hardest one of all for me, though, was when they asked you to perform and they asked me to translate. And my French is not as good as it ought to be, but you had the microphone and I did not. So I said, you know, you would say, "Ayu kurang mankano." Ah, jamais comme ça, jamais comme ça. It was very funny. And then afterwards, somebody told me, "Oh, I liked the character that spoke really good French." I have no idea which
Yeah,
character that was.
yeah. You know, I know Pak Larry very good in translating our character. You know, I'm happy. You know, I tell you the truth. I imitate or learn a lot from your uh, performances. For instance, like, you know, to get the joke, the local joke, you know, Pak Larry very easy to make, you know, the people laughing or funny movement. For instance, like when you perform to do the horse, you know, Dalang and Sangut to ride a horse. That was very funny for me. Always, whenever I perform, pasti, you know, I use that part, you know, the Dalam.
It was a scene where Dellum jumps on the horse and he's so heavy that they all sink down like that.
That's yeah, that's very funny. You know, wherever I perform, even, you know, like, you know, that my puppet. You know, I came to Japan, to Japan, to America 11 time. Always follow me, and then always, or you know, or what we call, I use your joke, you know, during my performance.
Well,
Yeah,
I'll tell you something
like
though.
that.
My jokes, you know, I'm always so jealous of Balinese performers, and I listen to the audience and say, "Oh my gosh, how could I make my audience respond like that?" Because they're so alive and they're so. Um, Whatever he said must have been really funny, and when it's translated, I didn't really get it, but I got the feeling of it from behind that, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I had some other point I was going to, but I forget what it was.
Yeah. Another thing I just remember, one of my student from Japan, doing the same like Valerie, also good creating something joke, you know. In Japan, I started, you know, student beginning. I came over there in 1980 to, and the student came to my house studying Gender Wayang at beginning, not Wayang. But after 1 year, and then turned out he interested to be the Dalang. I was so surprised. Are you, can you do, you play music very well, but to do the Dalang, I doubt, you know, I don't know yet. Turned out very good. And the same like Pak Larry, you know, he create joke because the clown, yeah, he speak Japanese. Uh, I don't speak, I mean, I don't give speak Bahasa Bali. Yeah, Bahasa Kawi always. Wherever and whoever study Bali Wayang always use the Kawi language. There is the reason why, because, you know, all the literature will come from the Kawi language too. So I'm I'm super proud also with Mr. Hidearu Umeda, his name, from Tokyo. He can, you know, perform a lot, and then he's used a couple different story. I make the dialogue in Kawi language, but he can translate into Japanese by his improvisation and very good also to
Yeah, that's really the great
presentation.
thing about Balinese Wayang is the way that you can use the clowns to approach any audience if you speak the language of that audience. And I think that's one of the things that I thought was really powerful about it and really kind of wonderful. But also I have to say that, you know, Pak Sumandhi's experience teaching and studying in America actually opened up the idea, and also many of the other teachers that we had at the time, that women could become gamelan players, could become dalangs. And that's an idea I think that came from their experience here and they brought back to Bali and really made a difference there.
After Umeda, I just remember now, two girls, one from America, Katie, her name, she's studying Wayang too with me, and also a girl, Sonia from Czechoslovakia, she's studying. Actually, she's student dancing in Bali, but interested to study Bali Wayang. So they can do, and not not perfect as yours, but still, you know, they can do, you know, the story Mahabharata, Arjuna Thakur from beginning to the end. So
If I had known how difficult it was to learn Wayang, I probably would have been scared to start. But I was so much in love with it that I just jumped in anyway and went as far as I could. So for about a 20-year period, all I could focus on was trying to get deeper and deeper into understanding Wayang. And I realize now that I wish that I had another lifetime and I still wouldn't get where I'd like to be.
yeah, you know, I think you the longest person to continue introduce our Bali Wayang. When you came to Bali, we don't have electricity, but now you create Wayang listrik in Bali. At the beginning, you came to Bali, no listrik here. Yeah, so I'm happy. Not just you do Wayang listrik, not just our friend from Hawaii, but Balinese, Pak Sidio, yeah, very interesting to do Wayang listrik as your idea. That's
One
very,
thing I'm
very
really
good.
interested in, you know, I had no experience with puppetry at all before studying Wayang Bali. I was an actor, but I was not a puppeteer. And so what I really liked about Balinese Wayang is the way that just with moving the character around and moving it like this, and with the flame behind it and the flame moving around, you can really express so many emotions just by how you move one stick, the character with one stick. The arms don't matter so much. It's the whole body that really matters. And even more than that, it's the head. So when I began to develop what in Bali is called Wayang listrik, which is the projected kind of shadow theater that I've been doing since about the late 80s, early 90s, a lot of people expected that we would create all kinds of tricky mechanisms to move this part and move that part. And at the time, I didn't understand that mentality at all. All I wanted to do, and I think that Richard Bradshaw is a really great example of somebody who really knows how to create a character that has a certain kind of movement that is super funny in the way that he presents it. But I was still trying to bring whatever I could from my understanding of Indonesian theater into this giant projected form of shadow theater. And I wanted people to do it by the way they move the whole puppet. Since then, I've gotten more not so strict about that. But the first couple of shows that I did, first of all, I wanted to have the puppets be really simple. But then I also put masks on the actors. And, you know, for a long time, I didn't know how to, I didn't think of that because what I loved about the Balinese puppets was the perforations, how the light shines through the puppet. And I could never figure out how to perforate people. And then after a while, I decided that that really didn't matter. So I went after the combination of using puppets in a long shot in a landscape and people in a medium to close up, and trying to use a vocabulary of film, but still always with a really deep appreciation of how and why Balinese puppets work the way they do, and Javanese as well.
So for now, you know, a lot our student at ASTI or at university, jurusan pedalangan, they happy and learn about wayang listrik. As you know, your idea you give you know them the influence, you know, especially Pak Sidio, special person who's doing wayang listrik, and now the other student of ASTI very interesting with making wayang listrik. So to me, you know, I'm happy. Of course, you know, we need them also has to learn our old classical tradition wayang. Okay.
And that's actually that's really one of the things I always hope that from my learning Wayang, that Balinese people would say, oh gee, if this foreigner can learn it, maybe it's more interesting, maybe it's more important than I thought, maybe I should learn it too. I always hoped I would inspire somebody in Bali to be a Dalang. I don't know.
Yeah. Pak Sidio very, you know, very often to do wayang listrik at his sanggar, you know.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
he teach at ASTI also. You know, very good. The only hard to perform to public, you know, only special, maybe special in a studio and at university only doing that one because
Yeah, right,
the,
right. It's actually hard to understand. It's easy to explain, but it's hard to really figure out. This has been so much fun for me. Pak Sumandhi and I have not talked this long for a long time, and it's really great. It's so fun to be together on Zoom. Really fun.
And thank you also. This is my, you know, first chance talk in English. Sometimes confused, very difficult to my tongue, you know, my tongue to speak English now, you know, because never home, never, even all my family could speak English, but I never, say any word to them, you know, kind of, you know, like very difficult for me to speak. Some word also lost, you know, or what you call forget to, you know, with the English part. Sorry about this, you know, because my English back like beginning, you know, that was good, you know. In 1979, I did Wayang in English, you know, by the story Calonarang. That was my English very good and very clear and everything, you know, I say just fine. But turned out, I learned a lot, joke, Pak Aleri, and then I try to do performance wayang in Bali, in Ubud, and at home. And at that time, my English was great. But now,
I know.
yeah, now my tongue kind of, you know, very, very not good, you know. Yeah.
It's okay though.
Sorry.
It's not so bad. It's not so bad. Pak Sumandhi, in your experience, what was the most difficult thing to teach foreigners for becoming a Dalang?
To teach Dalang to foreigner is what you call the language. The language actually, you know, a little bit hard, and also, you know, of course, you know, just the language, just not the sentences, but how make the feeling whenever they speaking. Sometimes they, you know, cannot feel like Bali sound. Yeah, that's very difficult to teach the foreigner. And the foreigner who study Wayang or Geder Wayang, I think easier to teach foreigner in play Geder Wayang rather than studying play Wayang Kulit. So I taught a couple of you know, person from foreign country, you know, they can get my song or my dialogue, but the feeling of, you know, how they speaking still hard, you know, hard to make like Balinese way.
You know,
So
if I can jump in there for a second, most people come to, most foreigners seem to come to Wayang from being Gender players first and then studying Wayang. My case was a little bit different because I was an actor first and a Gender player really last. I did learn to play Gender, but with, you know, Pak Yasi was my teacher. He's the same guy who's the teacher in Shadow Master, and the one who dies in the movie. Actually, it was Pak Rajeg's wife who died in the movie, and we filmed that. The movie is part documentary and part invented by Pak Sumandhi and I. And everybody was so amazed that Pak Yasi had the patience to teach me, because he was known as a very impatient teacher. And if you couldn't get it right away, you were lost. But with me, he would just go left hand, left, right, until I got it. And I spent most of my time in Tunjuk trying to learn to play the music. And at the end of the time, I did know the whole repertoire, but then coming back to the US, I didn't have anybody to practice with on a regular basis. So I kind of lost it all. And then last year I went back, and Wawan said, sit down and play. And I said, I can't play, I haven't played in 30 years. And we played Merakni Lo, and somehow I got more or less through it.
Yeah.
And then Ako Mashina says to me, what was the most difficult thing for you to learn Wayang? Well, the music to start with, and the singing as well. I got the feeling of the speaking pretty quickly because of my background as an actor. And the thing that really made it more possible than anything else was a tape recorder. And I could take because nobody would have the patience to go over and over and over the same sound, but I could rewind and play it and rewind and play it and rewind and play it. And I was out there in the Pancharan thinking I was all alone, not realizing there were another 50 or 60 people listening to me all the time. But the thing is that they really appreciated the effort I was making. And I think without the tape recorder, I wouldn't have been able to catch the feeling and the sounds. From Rachel C., how to interpret Wayang Kulit to an American form with new stories. Rachel, what I have done is I've kept Wayang Kulit as Wayang Kulit, and then I invented the new form, which was Wayang Listrik, which is a projected Wayang that I feel free to do any story with. But as far as Wayang goes, I try to keep it as traditional as possible and put my invention into the projected giant screen form. And then how was the experience of learning the movements and voices of the many characters? You know, as an actor, I was always typecast to be just a certain type. And so for me, the experience of being able to be every kind of character was totally liberating. I loved being able to find the voices of people that in real life I would detest, but in a show I could really get into. And you know, I'm really not that much like Dalang, but I can play him pretty well. I'm much more like Sangha, which
Yes.
is, you know, but to be able to play all of these characters and to find them all within yourself, I think that's the big deep lesson of Wayang, that all of these different personalities you have within you. And so when you're doing a show, you look deep inside of you and you bring them out. At least that's my hope. And sometimes it really happens.